The pen felt heavier than it should have. I watched Luca's hand move across the document, his signature flowing in that same confident script I'd seen on birthday cards, on the deed to our house, on the back of photographs from our honeymoon in Positano. 8 years of marriage reduced to 23 pages of legalese and 2 signatures at the bottom. The notary's office smelled of old paper and lemon polish. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that particular shade of institutional beige that made even the most significant moments feel mundane. My lawyer, Mrs. Chen, sat beside me with her hands folded on the conference table, her expression professionally neutral. Across from us, Luca's attorney, a sharp-faced man named Vitale, who I'd met exactly 3 times in 8 years, shuffled papers with practiced efficiency. "Mrs. Moretti, if you'll sign here," the notary said, sliding the divorce decree toward me. Her voice was kind but distant, the tone of someone who'd witnessed 1,000 endings and learned not to get emotionally involved in any of them. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. I'd expected it to, had prepared myself for tears or hesitation or some dramatic final moment of doubt. But there was nothing. Just the smooth glide of ink across paper, my maiden name, Elena Russo, appearing beneath the signature line like an old friend I hadn't seen in years. Luca hadn't looked at me once during the entire proceeding. He sat with his shoulders squared in that charcoal Brioni suit I'd helped him select 2 Christmases ago, his dark hair perfectly styled, his attention fixed on some point beyond the notary's left shoulder. Even now, even at the end of everything, he couldn't give me his full presence. That had been the problem all along. "That concludes our business," the notary announced, stamping the final page with a thud that felt absurdly ceremonial. "The decree will be filed with the county by end of business tomorrow. You're both free to go." Free. The word should have felt liberating. Instead, it just felt empty. Luca stood immediately, buttoning his suit jacket with mechanical precision. Vitale gathered their copies of the paperwork, murmuring something about a conference call at 3. My soon-to-be ex-husband. No, my ex-husband now. The papers were signed. Nodded once, his jaw tight. "Elena." He said my name like it cost him something. His eyes finally met mine, and for half a second I saw something flicker there. Regret maybe, or just irritation at the inconvenience of it all. "I hope you find what you're looking for." The dismissal in his tone made my spine straighten. 8 years of being the understanding wife, of accepting canceled dinners and interrupted conversations, of sleeping alone in our king-sized bed while he handled business that I was never supposed to ask about. 8 years of being treated like a beautiful object in his collection, cherished in theory, neglected in practice. "I already did," I replied, my voice steady. "A lawyer who actually returns my calls." Something flashed in his eyes. Surprise, maybe even hurt. But he covered it quickly with that impenetrable mask he wore so well. The one that made him so successful in his world of shadowy casino operations and men in expensive suits who spoke in coded phrases. He left without another word, Vitale trailing behind him like an obedient shadow. The door clicked shut with a finality that should have broken something inside me. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in months. Mrs. Chen began organizing her files. "You did well in there. Very composed." "Thank you." I stood, smoothing down my navy dress, the one I'd bought specifically for today because Luca had always hated it, said it made me look too severe. I'd worn it anyway, a small act of defiance. "For everything." "My pleasure." She handed me my folder of documents. "Remember, the restraining order on joint assets remains in effect until the property division is finalized. If he contacts you about anything other than the house sale, call me immediately." I nodded, though I doubted Luca would contact me at all. He'd made his position clear over the past 6 months. I was being unreasonable, emotional, throwing away a good life because I couldn't appreciate what I had. The irony was suffocating. The parking garage was 3 levels below street level, dim and echoing with the sound of my heels against concrete. I'd parked in the far corner, away from the elevators, preferring the walk to clear my head. My car, a modest sedan I'd bought with money from my freelance translation work, not a penny from Luca's accounts, waited in its spot like a faithful friend. I was 20 feet away when I saw them. Luca stood beside his black Mercedes, his back to me, talking on his phone in that low, urgent tone I knew so well. The tone that meant business, that meant don't interrupt, that meant I was about to be alone for another evening while he handled something that couldn't wait. But he wasn't alone. A woman stood with him, tall, blonde, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She was laughing at something, her hand resting on his arm with casual familiarity. Not intimate exactly, but comfortable. The way people look when they've spent time together, when they know each other's rhythms. I should have kept walking. Should have gotten in my car and driven away from Luca Moretti and his mysterious phone calls and his beautiful professional associates who probably understood his world better than I ever could. Should have taken the high road. Instead, I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Marco. Marco Ricci had appeared in my life 3 months ago at a gallery opening I'd attended alone, because Luca had canceled at the last minute naturally. Marco was an architect, divorced, with kind eyes and a self-deprecating sense of humor that made me laugh for the first time in months. We'd been seeing each other casually, nothing serious, just coffee and conversation, and the gentle reminder that I was still a person outside of being Luca's neglected wife. Ex-wife now, I reminded myself. The text was brief. Are you nearby? Just finished at the notary's. Could use a friendly face. His reply came within seconds. Downtown lot on 5th? I can be there in 10 minutes. I leaned against my car and waited, watching Luca from a distance. He was still on his phone, still animated in that controlled way he had, his free hand gesturing as he spoke. The blonde woman had moved away slightly, checking her own phone, but she kept glancing at him with an expression I couldn't quite read. 8 years. 8 years of watching him choose everything else over me, of being the patient, understanding wife who never complained about the canceled anniversaries, or the charity galas I attended alone, or the Christmas morning he'd spent in his study on a conference call while I opened presents by myself. No more. Marco's Volvo pulled into the lot exactly 9 minutes later. I watched him park, watched him step out looking slightly concerned. His tie loosened from whatever meeting he'd left early to be here. He spotted me immediately, and his expression softened into something warm and genuine. I walked toward him, my heels clicking purposefully against the concrete. From the corner of my eye, I could see Luca still by his Mercedes, his phone call apparently finished. He was talking to the blonde woman now, both of them organizing papers on the hood of his car. Marco met me halfway, his hands coming up to gently hold my shoulders. How did it go? Are you okay? I'm free, I said, and meant it. He smiled, that gentle, understanding smile that had first drawn me to him. That's good. That's really good, Elena. And then I kissed him. Not because I loved him. We weren't there yet. Might never be there. But because I could. Because for the first time in 8 years, my life was my own. Because somewhere behind me was a man who had taken me for granted for so long that he'd forgotten I was capable of leaving. Marco was surprised but not unwilling, his hand settling at my waist as he returned the kiss with careful warmth. It wasn't fireworks or earth-shattering passion. It was simple and honest, and mine. When we parted, I looked over Marco's shoulder. Luca was staring at us, his phone forgotten in his hand, his face a mask of something I'd never seen there before. The blonde woman was still talking, apparently oblivious, but Luca wasn't listening anymore. He was watching me kiss another man in a parking garage, 20 minutes after signing away our marriage, and for the first time in 8 years of knowing him, I saw Luca Moretti look absolutely stricken. Good, I thought. Let him feel what I felt every time he chose his phone over our dinner. Every time he promised to be home and didn't show up. Every time he looked through me like I was furniture. I turned back to Marco, deliberately breaking eye contact with my ex-husband. Thank you for coming. Always, Marco said, squeezing my hand. Want to grab lunch? Celebrate your freedom? I'd like that. We walked to his car together, and I didn't look back once, but I could feel Luca's eyes on me the entire way. The first sign that something had changed came 3 days later when Mrs. Chen called at 7 in the morning. Elena, I need you to sit down, she said without preamble. Luca's attorney just filed a motion to contest the property settlement. I sat at my small kitchen table, coffee cup halfway to my lips, through the window of my rented apartment, a bright one-bedroom in a converted brownstone, so different from the sprawling mansion I'd shared with Luca. I could see morning light painting the street gold. On what grounds? That's the interesting part. He's claiming there are additional assets that weren't properly disclosed during discovery. Mrs. Chen's voice carried a note of professional irritation. Assets he supposedly acquired during the marriage that should be subject to division. I set down my coffee. That's ridiculous. We went through everything. He was the one who wanted this done quickly and cleanly. I know. And 3 days ago, he was signing papers without a single objection. She paused. Elena, has he contacted you at all since the decree was filed? No. Why? Because this feels personal. In 30 years of family law, I've never seen someone pull a move like this after already agreeing to terms. It's going to cost him more in legal fees than whatever assets he's claiming are in dispute. I thought about the parking garage, about Marco's kiss, about the look on Luca's face. That raw, unguarded shock that I'd never seen in 8 years of marriage. He saw me, I said quietly, after the notary. He saw me with someone. Mrs. Chen was silent for a moment. I see. Well, that would explain the sudden change of heart. Her tone became brisk, professional. Can you come to my office this afternoon? We need to strategize our response. After we hung up, I sat staring at my cooling coffee, my mind racing. This wasn't about assets or property division. This was Luca Moretti, a man accustomed to controlling everything in his orbit, realizing that I had moved on before he'd even processed that I was gone. My phone buzzed with a text from Marco. Good morning. Still on for dinner tonight? I smiled despite the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Wouldn't miss it, though I might need a drink first. Luca's being difficult. His response was immediate. Want me to talk to him? I could picture Marco's earnest face, his architect's precision applied to solving human problems. Sweet, but utterly unequipped to deal with someone like Luca Moretti. No, but thank you. I have a lawyer for this kind of thing. The second sign came that evening as I was getting ready for dinner with Marco. I'd just finished my makeup when my phone rang from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Elena. Luca's voice, smooth as aged whiskey, filled my ear. We need to talk. My hand tightened on the phone. We have lawyers for that now. Mine told me about your motion. This isn't about the motion. A pause. Who was he? I should have hung up. Should have blocked the number and let Mrs. Chen handle all future communication. Instead, I found myself answering. That's none of your business anymore. You were with him 20 minutes after our divorce was finalized. His voice was controlled, but I could hear something underneath it. Something sharp and unfamiliar. It's absolutely my business. No, Luca, it isn't. I moved to my closet, phone wedged between my shoulder and ear, pulling out the emerald dress I'd chosen for tonight. You lost the right to ask me questions about my personal life when you signed those papers. How long? He demanded. How long have you been seeing him? The audacity nearly made me laugh. Does it matter? You never noticed when we were married. Why start paying attention now? Answer the question, Elena. 3 months. I let the words land, sharp and deliberate. 3 months of actually being seen by someone, of having conversations that don't get interrupted by your phone, of not being stood up for dinner because something came up at the casino. Silence on the other end. Then, so you were cheating. The accusation hit like a slap. I was lonely, Luca. There's a difference. And I never so much as looked at another man until after I filed for divorce. Can you say the same about all those late nights with your associates? I never touched another woman. His voice was cold now, offended. In 8 years, I was faithful to you. Physically, maybe. I zipped up the dress, staring at my reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman looking back at me was stronger than the one who'd signed those papers 3 days ago. But you were married to your business, Luca. I was just the decoration you kept at home. That's not... He stopped, and I heard him take a measured breath. The sound of Luca collecting himself, reasserting control. I gave you everything, the house, the cars, the lifestyle. Everything except yourself. My voice was quiet now, tired. I would have traded all of it for one dinner where you actually listened to me. One conversation where your phone stayed in your pocket. One anniversary where you remembered without your assistant reminding you. Another pause. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted into something I couldn't quite identify. The motion isn't about the assets. I know. I saw you kiss him. The words came out rough, unpolished. In the parking garage, I saw you. I know that too. It should have been me. So quiet I almost missed it. After everything we'd just been through, if you needed comfort, it should have been me. The rawness in his voice caught me off guard. In 8 years, I'd never heard Luca sound uncertain about anything. He was always composed, always in control, always 3 steps ahead of everyone around him. You can't have it both ways, I said finally. You can't ignore me for 8 years, and then be upset when I stop waiting for you to notice I exist. I noticed. His voice strengthened. I always noticed, Elena. Every dress you wore, every book you read, every quiet sigh when I canceled our plans. I noticed all of it. Then why? Because I'm a fool. He cut me off, because I thought you'd always be there, that you understood what I was building, what I was trying to create for us. I didn't want an empire, Luca. I wanted a husband. The doorbell rang. Marco, punctual as always. I glanced at my watch. 7 o'clock exactly. I have to go, I said. Please don't call this number again. Elena, wait. I hung up and turned off my phone. Marco stood in the hallway holding a bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite, wearing a smile that faded slightly when he saw my expression. Everything okay? It will be. I took the flowers, breathing in their bright, uncomplicated scent. Thank you for these. Just let me put them in water and we can go. As I arranged the sunflowers in a vase, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. Behind me, Marco was examining my bookshelf with genuine interest, commenting on a first edition Calvino I'd found at an estate sale. A man who paid attention to small things, who remembered details, who showed up when he said he would. Everything Luca wasn't. So why did my chest still ache with the memory of his voice saying it should have been me? The third sign came a week later, when the for sale sign disappeared from the lawn of our former home. I was driving past, not deliberately, just my usual route to the grocery store, when I noticed its absence. I pulled over, staring at the sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion with its terracotta roof and professionally landscaped gardens. The sign that had been there for 3 months, the one that represented our agreed-upon plan to sell and split the proceeds, was gone. I called Mrs. Chen immediately. "I was just about to contact you," she said before I could speak. "Luca's attorney informed me this morning that the house is off the market. He's refinancing to buy out your share. But we agreed. I know, and legally, he's within his rights to make a buyout offer. The question is whether you'll accept it." Mrs. Chen paused. "Elena, his offer is substantially above market value. He's essentially giving you more money to keep the house." I stared at the mansion, remembering the day we'd first walked through it together. Luca had been so excited, rare enthusiasm breaking through his usual controlled demeanor as he described how we'd fill each room with our future. Children, he'd said. A family. We'd never gotten around to that part. "Why would he do that?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I suspect," Mrs. Chen said carefully, "that your ex-husband is having second thoughts about several things. That evening, I was having dinner at my favorite Thai restaurant with my friend Claudia when I saw him. Luca sat 3 tables away with 2 men I didn't recognize, but the meeting had his signature all over it. Expensive suits, hushed tones, papers spread across the table alongside untouched plates of food. Business. Always business. Except this time, he kept glancing at me. Not obviously. Not enough for his companions to notice. But I felt his attention like a physical weight, tracking my movements as I laughed at something Claudia said, as I sipped my wine, as I lived my life completely independent of him. When I excused myself to the restroom, I wasn't surprised to find him waiting in the hallway when I emerged. "Are you following me?" I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. "I'm having a meeting." He gestured toward his table. "I've been coming here for years. Funny, in 8 years of marriage, you never once suggested we eat here." Something crossed his face, acknowledgement, maybe even shame. "You always said you didn't like Thai food." "I said I didn't like that place near your office because the owner was rude to the waitstaff." I crossed my arms. "But you never asked for clarification. Just filed it away as Elena doesn't like Thai and moved on." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I'm trying to understand what I did wrong." The admission caught me off guard. Luca Moretti didn't admit fault, didn't question his own judgment. It was one of the things that made him so successful, and so impossible to live with. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said quietly. "You just didn't do much of anything at all. Not with me, anyway. I provided for you." "I don't want to hear about providing, Luca." I felt 8 years of careful restraint beginning to crack. I wanted a partner, not a benefactor. I wanted someone who came home for dinner, who asked about my day, who didn't treat our marriage like item 17 on his daily agenda. "Is that what he gives you?" The words came out harsh. "The architect? Does he ask about your day?" "Yes." I met his eyes steadily. "He does. And he actually listens to the answer." I saw my words land like physical blows, saw something raw flash across Luca's usually impassive features. For a moment, I thought he might actually say something real, something honest. Instead, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it automatically. Muscle memory from 8 years of always being available, always reachable, always prioritizing whoever was on the other end of that call. I turned to walk away. "Elena, wait. Your phone is ringing," I said, without looking back. "Better answer it. Might be important." I returned to my table where Claudia was scrolling through her phone, pointedly not looking in Luca's direction, though I knew she'd seen everything. "You okay?" she asked as I sat down. "I will be." I picked up my wine glass. "Eventually." But as I left the restaurant an hour later, I noticed that Luca's table was empty, his meeting apparently abandoned. And when I got home, I found a single sunflower, my favorite, in a simple vase outside my apartment door. No card. No message. Just a flower that couldn't have been from Marco, because he was out of town on business. I brought it inside and set it on my kitchen counter, staring at it for a long time before finally allowing myself to acknowledge what I'd been fighting since that phone call. Luca Moretti was finally paying attention. The question was whether it was too late. The surveillance started subtly. Or perhaps it had always been there and I was only now noticing it. The same black sedan appeared 3 times in 2 weeks, parked across from my apartment building at different times of day. At the farmer's market on Saturday morning, I caught sight of a man in a leather jacket, who seemed far too interested in the organic produce stand, the same man I'd seen outside the gym on Tuesday. And when I went to the movies with Marco, there was Dimitri, Luca's driver for the past decade, sitting 5 rows behind us, alone, watching an art house film I knew for certain he had no interest in. I called Mrs. Chen again. "He's having you followed," I said without preamble. "Can we get a restraining order?" She sighed. "Elena, I hate to say this, but unless he's threatening you or making contact himself, there's not much we can do. And technically, if these are public places, so I'm just supposed to accept being stalked. I'll send his attorney a strongly worded letter about respecting your privacy." Her tone was apologetic. "But short of catching someone actually trespassing or harassing you, our options are limited." After we hung up, I stood at my window watching the black sedan idling across the street. The driver, not Dimitri this time, someone I didn't recognize, was reading a newspaper, occasionally glancing up at my building. My phone buzzed with a text from Marco. "Still good for the gallery opening tomorrow night?" I hesitated before responding. Marco had been patient and understanding over the past month, but I could see the strain starting to show. The canceled plans when Luca's lawyer scheduled yet another emergency meeting. The carefully neutral expression when I mentioned my ex-husband's latest legal maneuver. The way his smile tightened whenever I checked my phone, worried about what new tactic Luca might deploy. "Looking forward to it," I typed back. "Pick me up at 7? The gallery opening was at a converted warehouse in the Arts District, featuring an up-and-coming sculptor whose work explored themes of entrapment and freedom. The irony wasn't lost on me as Marco and I admired a piece called Gilded Cage, a beautiful bronze bird trapped inside delicate golden bars. "The artist says it's about choosing comfort over authentic life," Marco explained, reading from the placard. He was doing that thing he did when he was nervous, overcompensating with intellectual analysis. How we sometimes imprison ourselves without realizing it. I sipped my wine, acutely aware of the man in the charcoal suit examining a painting 20 feet away. Not one of Luca's usual associates, but the watchful quality was the same. "It's beautiful." "You're distracted." Marco's voice was gentle, but there was an edge underneath. "You've been distracted for weeks now." "I'm sorry." I turned to face him fully, forcing myself to focus. "You're right. I'm here. I'm present." "Are you?" He set down his wine glass. "Because it feels like even when you're with me, you're still fighting with Luca, still letting him control your life, just in a different way." The accuracy of the observation stung. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Marco's expression was kind but resolute. "Elena, I care about you. I think you're incredible, but I'm starting to wonder if there's room in your life for someone new when you're still so tangled up with the old." Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the ambient noise of the gallery. "Elena, what a pleasant surprise." I turned to find Luca standing 3 feet away, impeccably dressed in navy blue with that particular shade of tie I'd once told him brought out his eyes. He held a glass of red wine and wore an expression of polite interest, as if running into his ex-wife at a gallery opening was the most natural thing in the world. "Luca!" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I didn't know you were interested in contemporary sculpture." "I'm on the museum board." His gaze flickered to Marco, cool and assessing. We sponsor emerging artists. You must be the architect. Marco extended his hand with professional courtesy. Marco Ricci. And you must be the ex-husband who can't seem to finalize a property settlement. I winced, but Luca's expression didn't change. He shook Marco's hand with measured firmness. Luca Moretti. And the settlement is perfectly finalized. I'm simply ensuring Elena receives everything she's entitled to. By contesting agreements you already signed. Marco's architect's precision emerged, that analytical mind that could spot structural weaknesses. Forgive me, but that seems counterproductive. Does it? Luca's smile was subtle, dangerous. I'd call it thorough, making sure no details are overlooked, no assets undervalued. Surely, as an architect, you appreciate the importance of getting the foundation right before building anything permanent. The metaphor wasn't subtle. I stepped between them, quite literally. Marco, would you mind getting me another glass of wine? The Pinot Noir was excellent. He hesitated, clearly unwilling to leave me alone with Luca, but ultimately nodded. Of course. I'll be right back. As soon as Marco was out of earshot, I turned on Luca. What are you doing here? I told you, museum board. He gestured around the gallery with his wine glass. Though I'll admit, when I saw your name on the RSVP list, I was curious. You're having me followed, Luca. That's not curiosity. That's obsession. Protective surveillance, he corrected calmly. You're still my wife in the eyes of ex-wife. The decree was finalized 3 weeks ago. Legally, yes. Something shifted in his expression, that mask slipping just slightly. But you'll forgive me if I'm having difficulty adjusting to the reality of you being with someone else. I don't need your forgiveness. I kept my voice low, conscious of the other gallery patrons. And I don't need your protection. What I need is for you to let me move on with my life. Is that what you're doing? He nodded toward where Marco stood at the wine table, chatting with the server. Moving on with a man you've known for 3 months? A nice, safe architect who probably discusses floor plans over dinner and goes to bed by 10? The condescension in his tone ignited something hot and angry in my chest. Yes, actually, I'm moving on with someone who treats me like a person instead of a possession. Someone who shows up when he says he will. Someone whose idea of quality time doesn't involve reviewing quarterly earnings reports while I sit across from him being decorative. I never thought of you as decorative. His voice dropped, becoming more intense. You were the most intelligent, fascinating woman I'd ever met. You still are. Then why did you treat me like wallpaper for 8 years? The question hung between us, raw and honest. Around us, the gallery opening continued. Conversations about art and wine and technique. But in our small circle of tension, everything had gone still. Because I'm a fool, Luca said finally, echoing his words from that phone call. Because I thought love meant providing security, building something that would last. I didn't realize you needed more than a stable foundation. I needed you, Luca. Not your money, not your protection, not your grand vision for the future. Just you. My voice cracked slightly. I needed the man who used to read poetry to me in bed on Sunday mornings. The one who took me dancing in the rain during that weekend in Venice. The one who actually looked at me when I talked. I still look at you. His eyes held mine with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. Elena, I never stopped looking. Then you have a funny way of showing it. Marco was returning, 2 wine glasses in hand, his expression carefully neutral, but his jaw tight. I took a breath, preparing to de-escalate, to smooth over the tension and salvage what was left of the evening. Luca spoke first, addressing Marco directly. Take care of her. She deserves someone who will. Then he was gone, moving through the crowd with the fluid grace he'd always possessed, stopping briefly to shake hands with the gallery owner before disappearing into the night. Marco handed me my wine, his expression unreadable. That was intense. I'm sorry. I took a long sip, my hand trembling slightly. I had no idea he'd be here. I know. Marco's voice was gentle. Elena, I think we need to talk. We found a quiet corner of the gallery, away from the main crowd. Marco set down his wine glass and took my hands in his expression kind, but resigned. You're still in love with him, he said. Not an accusation, just a fact. No. The denial came automatically. Marco, I left him. I divorced him. You're still fighting with him, Marco interrupted gently. Which means you still care what he thinks, what he does, whether he notices you. He squeezed my hands. And I can't compete with that kind of history. You're not competing. I am, though. His smile was sad. And I'm losing to a man who's not even trying. To a ghost of what you used to have, of what you wanted it to be. He released my hands, stepping back. Elena, you're wonderful. You're smart and funny, and deserving of someone who sees you. But until you actually let go of Luca Moretti, not just legally but emotionally, you're not really available. The truth of it hit me like a physical blow. I'm sorry. Don't be. Marco touched my cheek briefly, affectionately. You gave me 3 months of wonderful company and reminded me that I could feel something again after my divorce. That's not nothing. He picked up his coat from where he'd draped it over a chair. But I think I need to step back now. Let you figure out what you actually want without me in the middle of it. Marco, please. No hard feelings, Elena, truly. He kissed my forehead, a gesture of genuine fondness. When you're really ready, when you're really free, I hope you find someone worthy of you. I really do. I watched him leave. This kind, decent man who had been exactly what I thought I wanted. The anti-Luca, present, attentive, emotionally available. So why did watching him walk away feel like relief instead of loss? I stayed at the gallery for another hour, wandering among the sculptures with a glass of wine I barely tasted. The gilded cage piece drew me back repeatedly, its beautiful bird forever trapped in the paradox of wanting freedom while being terrified of the unknown beyond those bars. When I finally left, stepping out into the cool October night, I found Dimitri waiting by a familiar black Mercedes. Mrs. Moretti. He nodded respectfully, using my old name without irony or agenda. Mr. Moretti asked me to make sure you got home safely. I can take a cab, Dimitri. I'm sure you can. His expression remained professionally neutral. But I'd appreciate it if you'd let me do my job. These aren't the best streets late at night. I was too tired to argue. I slid into the back seat, breathing in the familiar scent of leather and the faint trace of Luca's cologne. Dimitri pulled into traffic with his usual smooth efficiency, the city lights sliding past the tinted windows. How is he? I heard myself ask. Really? Dimitri's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. Not well, if I'm being honest. Haven't seen him like this in the 15 years I've worked for him. Like what? Distracted, unfocused. A pause. Human. The word hung in the air between us. Dimitri had been Luca's driver, bodyguard, and probably confidant longer than I'd been in the picture. If anyone knew the real Luca Moretti, the one beneath the control and calculation, it would be him. He made his choices, I said quietly. He did. Dimitri navigated through a yellow light. And now he's living with the consequences, which between you and me is probably the first time in his life he's had to do that. We pulled up outside my building. Dimitri came around to open my door, ever the professional. Thank you for the ride. Mrs. Moretti? He said it as I was turning away. For what it's worth, I've never seen him care about anything the way he cares about getting you back. Not the business, not his reputation, nothing. Then maybe, I said, exhaustion making me honest. He should have cared that much when we were actually married. I rode the elevator to my floor, keys already in hand. But when I reached my door, I found another delivery. A small package wrapped in brown paper, my name written in Luca's distinctive script. Inside was a book, a first edition of Neruda's love poems, the same collection he used to read to me on those Sunday mornings that felt like a lifetime ago. A sticky note marked one particular poem. I crave your mouth, your voice, your hair. Beneath it, Luca had written in the margin, I should have shown you this every day instead of once a week. I should have made you feel loved instead of assuming you knew. I'm sorry I forgot how to see you. I stood in my small apartment, holding the book like it might dissolve if I gripped too hard, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. Because the truly terrible thing was this. I didn't know if these gestures, the surveillance, the contested settlement, the flowers and the poetry, represented real change or just a man who couldn't stand losing. And I wasn't sure which answer I was hoping for. The subpoena arrived on a gray November morning, delivered by a process server who apologized twice before handing me the envelope. I called Mrs. Chen immediately. They're bringing criminal charges? My voice came out higher than I intended. Against Luca? It appears so. Papers rustled on her end. Federal racketeering investigation. They're calling you as a witness about financial transactions during your marriage. My legs went weak. I sank onto my couch, the subpoena trembling in my hand. I don't know anything about his business. I deliberately stayed out of it. Unfortunately, as his wife for 8 years, ex-wife, you had access to accounts, properties, and information that might be relevant to their case. Mrs. Chen's voice was carefully professional. Elena, you need a criminal defense attorney. I can recommend someone, but this is beyond my scope. After we hung up, I sat staring at the legal document, my mind reeling. Federal charges, racketeering, words that belonged in movies, not in my quiet life of freelance translation work and farmers markets and trying to rebuild myself after a failed marriage. The reality I'd carefully avoided for 8 years was finally catching up with me. I had married a man whose business empire was built on something more dangerous than just aggressive casino management. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Elena. Luca's voice, but different this time, strained. We need to meet, now. Did you know? I demanded. About the investigation? A pause. Yes. How long? 3 months. 3 months, right around the time I'd filed for divorce. The timing suddenly made sickening sense. All those contested motions, the delays, the sudden interest in prolonging our legal separation. You were trying to protect me, I said slowly. Keeping me tied to you legally so I'd have spousal privilege. Partly. His honesty surprised me. And partly because I'm a selfish bastard who wasn't ready to let you go. I'm being called to testify, Luca. I know. That's why we need to meet. He paused. Please, Elena. Not as your ex-husband. As someone who needs to explain before you make a decision that affects both our lives. Against every instinct screaming at me to refuse, I agreed. We met at a small cafe in a neighborhood neither of us frequented, far from both his usual haunts and mine. Luca arrived first, sitting at a back table with an untouched espresso, looking more exhausted than I'd ever seen him. His suit was still impeccable, but there were shadows under his eyes and a tension in his shoulders that spoke of sleepless nights. I slid into the seat across from him. No greeting, no pleasantries. Tell me. He took a breath. Most of what they'll ask you about is legitimate business. The casinos, the real estate holdings, the investment portfolios. All legal, all properly taxed. And the rest? His eyes met mine. There are some partnerships with individuals whose other business interests are questionable. Loans secured through unconventional means. Real estate deals structured to obscure ownership. He rotated his espresso cup absently. Nothing violent, no drugs, no trafficking, nothing that directly harms people, but gray areas that federal prosecutors love to paint in black and white. Why? I asked. You have enough money. Legitimate money. Why risk everything for these gray areas? Control. The answer was immediate, honest. In my world, straight business puts you at the mercy of banks, regulators, market fluctuations. The gray areas give you leverage, options, independence. He leaned forward. My father built this empire from nothing, Elena. Immigrant kid from Sicily who worked his way up from washing dishes to owning the restaurants. He taught me that the rules are written by people who already have power, designed to keep people like us out. So you broke them. I bent them. A slight smile, no humor in it. There's a difference. Not to the federal government. No, he agreed, not to them. I wrapped my hands around my own coffee cup, needing something to anchor myself. What are they asking me to testify about? Financial transactions. Large cash deposits that went through our joint accounts. Meetings I had at the house that you might have been present for. Conversations you might have overheard. His voice remained steady. Elena, I need you to understand something. I kept you deliberately separate from the business precisely to protect you. You never signed anything, never attended actual meetings, never made decisions. That was intentional. How thoughtful. Bitterness crept into my voice. The same consideration that left me sitting alone at our dining table every night. Yes. He didn't flinch from the accusation. I was trying to build something big enough, secure enough, that you'd never want for anything. And in the process, I neglected to actually be present for the life I was supposedly building. I studied his face, searching for manipulation, for the calculated charm he could deploy so effectively when needed. But all I saw was exhaustion and something that looked like genuine regret. What do you want me to do? I asked finally. Tell the truth. The answer surprised me. Whatever they ask, answer honestly. You don't know anything that can actually hurt me because I made sure of that. But if you try to protect me, if you obstruct or lie, they'll charge you too. You want me to testify against you. I want you safe. His voice was fierce. Elena, I've made 1,000 mistakes with you. Let my choices destroy our marriage, but I will not let my choices destroy your life. I felt something crack in my chest, a wall I'd carefully maintained since the day I filed for divorce. Luca, there's something else. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a thick envelope. I'm selling everything. The casinos, the questionable partnerships, all of it. Returning to legitimate business only. Hotels, restaurants, real estate development. Clean. I stared at the envelope without touching it. Why? Because you were right. His eyes held mine. Because I've spent 8 years building an empire and lost the only thing that actually mattered. Because I'd rather start over with nothing and have a chance with you than keep everything and lose you forever. We're already divorced. Legally, yes. He set the envelope on the table between us. But I'm hoping that can be corrected. My breath caught. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. He leaned forward. Elena, I know I have no right to ask. I know I hurt you, neglected you, took you for granted in ways I'm only beginning to understand. But I'm asking anyway. Give me a chance to be the husband you deserved. The one I should have been from the beginning. This is insane. I pushed back from the table. You can't just decide you want me back and expect me to forget 8 years of being invisible to you. I'm not expecting you to forget. He remained seated, controlled. I'm asking you to consider whether people can change, whether I can change. Can you? The question came out sharper than intended. Can the man who built an empire on control and leverage and gray areas really just walk away from it? Or is this another calculated move, Luca? Position yourself as reformed. Win back the ex-wife. Improve your image for the trial. He flinched. The first genuine emotional reaction I'd seen from him in this entire conversation. Is that really what you think of me? I don't know what to think anymore. I stood, gathering my purse. 2 months ago, you signed divorce papers without a second thought. Then you saw me kiss someone else and suddenly, I'm the most important thing in your life? That's not love, Luca. That's ego. You're right. His admission stopped me halfway to standing. About all of it. My pride was hurt. My control was shaken. Seeing you with someone else made me realize what I'd lost in a way that your leaving never did. He stood now, slowly. But the feeling beneath the ego? The realization that I'd let the most important person in my life slip away because I was too busy building things that don't matter? That's real, Elena. I swear to you, that's real. We stood there, the cafe's ambient noise washing over us, the hiss of the espresso machine, conversations in Italian from the kitchen, a child laughing outside. I need time, I said finally, to think, to talk to a lawyer about the testimony, to figure out what I actually want instead of just reacting to what you want. Take all the time you need. He pulled out his wallet and left cash on the table for our untouched drinks. But Elena, whatever you decide about us, please believe this. I never meant to make you feel invisible. You were the brightest thing in my life. I just forgot to tell you that. I left without responding, my mind too chaotic for words. The federal prosecutor's office was in a sterile high-rise downtown, all glass and steel and uncomfortable chairs. The attorney who interviewed me was a woman named Patricia Morrison, mid-40s with sharp eyes and a gentle voice that probably made people confess things they didn't mean to. Mrs. Moretti, thank you for coming in voluntarily. It's Ms. Russo now. We're divorced. Of course, my apologies. She opened a thick file. I'll get straight to the point. We're building a case against your ex-husband for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy. We believe you have information that could be crucial to our investigation. For 2 hours, she walked me through transactions, dates, meetings. I answered honestly, as Luca had advised. I didn't know. I wasn't present. He kept business separate from our personal life. It was only when she asked about character that I hesitated. In your experience, Ms. Russo, did Luca Moretti ever demonstrate violent tendencies, intimidation tactics, threats toward those who crossed him? I thought about 8 years of marriage, the late nights, the hushed phone calls, the associates with dangerous eyes who came to our home for meetings I was carefully excluded from. I also thought about the morning I'd had food poisoning, and Luca had canceled all his meetings to sit by my side, bringing me ginger tea and reading to me between bouts of nausea. The way he'd actually cried, when his mother died, and he'd let himself be vulnerable only with me. The fierce protectiveness when a client at a charity event had made a crude comment about my appearance. No, I said finally. Whatever else Luca Moretti might be, I never saw him be violent. Never saw him threaten anyone physically. His power came from leverage, from knowing things and using that knowledge strategically, but not from violence. Patricia Morrison studied me carefully. You're protecting him. I'm telling you the truth as I experienced it. I met her gaze steadily. You asked what I witnessed. I'm telling you. After the interview, I sat in my car in the parking garage, my hands shaking from adrenaline. I'd just testified, not officially, but in a way that would shape their case against Luca. I'd told the truth. but I'd also chosen which truths to emphasize. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thank you. Nothing else. But I knew it was from Luca. Knew somehow that he'd found out about my interview already. His network of information, still functioning even as his empire crumbled around him. I drove home through downtown traffic, my mind replaying Patricia Morrison's questions and my own answers. Had I been honest? Yes. Had I been strategic in how I presented that honesty? Also yes. Because the truth was more complicated than federal prosecutors wanted to hear. Luca Moretti was neither a violent criminal nor an innocent businessman. He was a man who operated in spaces between legal definitions, who built power through information and leverage rather than force, who hurt people through absence and neglect rather than action. And despite everything, despite the divorce and the pain, and the 8 years of being invisible, some part of me still wanted to protect him from a legal system that saw only black and white in a world that lived primarily in gray. The trial began in February, 5 months after our divorce was finalized. I watched from the gallery as Luca entered the courtroom in a charcoal suit, flanked by his legal team. He looked thinner than I remembered, the sharp angles of his face more pronounced, but his composure remained absolute. He didn't look at me. Not once during the entire first day of proceedings. The prosecution painted a picture of a criminal empire disguised as legitimate business, money laundering through casino operations, loan sharking dressed up as private lending, real estate deals structured specifically to obscure ownership and evade taxes. They had financial records, witness testimony, a paper trail carefully constructed over months of investigation. Luca's defense argued that aggressive business tactics and creative financial structures didn't constitute criminal activity, that the prosecution was trying to criminalize success, targeting an immigrant family that had built something from nothing through hard work and determination. I attended every day of the trial, sitting in the back row, watching the man I'd married be dissected by lawyers who'd never shared a meal with him, never heard him laugh, never seen him vulnerable. On the third day, I was called to testify. The courtroom fell silent as I was sworn in. Patricia Morrison approached with her trademark combination of professionalism and barely concealed intensity. Ms. Russo, you were married to the defendant for 8 years. Is that correct? Yes. During that time, were you aware of his business operations? Generally, yes. Specifically, no. He kept his work separate from our personal life. She walked me through the same questions from our initial interview. Transactions, meetings, conversations I might have overheard. I answered each one honestly. I didn't know. I wasn't present. He was careful to shield me from the details of his business. Then she shifted tactics. Ms. Russo, you filed for divorce last year. Can you tell the court why? Luca's attorney objected immediately. Relevance, Your Honor. The defendant's personal life speaks to his character, Patricia Morrison argued. We're trying to establish a pattern of deception and control. The judge considered. I'll allow it, but keep it brief. I took a breath, suddenly aware of dozens of eyes on me. The jury, the press, the gallery full of people invested in Luca's fall or survival. I left because I was lonely, I said quietly, because my husband was married to his business in a way he never was to me, because I spent 8 years being provided for materially while starving emotionally. Did you ever suspect that his business involved illegal activity? The question hung in the air. The honest answer was complicated. I'd suspected. I'd chosen not to know. I'd traded willful ignorance for the comfort and security of being Mrs. Luca Moretti. I suspected he operated in gray areas, I said finally. But I never witnessed anything I would consider criminal. No violence, no explicit illegal activity, no obvious harm to others. Patricia Morrison's expression tightened with frustration. She'd wanted me to be the scorned ex-wife, ready to burn down the man who'd hurt her. Instead, I was giving careful, measured testimony that undermined her narrative of Luca as a dangerous criminal. You're protecting him, she said. echoing her words from our first interview. "I'm telling the truth," I replied. "Whatever our personal problems, I never saw Luca Moretti break the law. I saw him work too much, prioritize his business over his marriage, and build an empire through aggressive but legal tactics. That might make him a bad husband. It doesn't make him a criminal." Luca's attorney declined to cross-examine. I was dismissed, my testimony complete. As I left the witness stand, I finally allowed myself to look at Luca. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, gratitude perhaps, or something deeper. Something that looked like the beginning of hope. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The prosecution presented mountains of evidence: financial records, testimony from former employees, analysis from forensic accountants. Luca's defense systematically dismantled the criminal narrative, arguing that aggressive business didn't equal illegal business, that creative financial structures didn't constitute money laundering, that the prosecution was criminalizing success. I attended every day, a silent witness to the destruction and defense of the man I'd once loved, might still love, though I barely admitted that even to myself. The verdict came on a rainy Thursday in late March. Guilty on 3 counts of racketeering, not guilty on the money laundering charges, guilty on 2 counts of financial fraud. I watched Luca's face as the jury foreman read each verdict. He remained absolutely still, that mask of control firmly in place. Only his hands betrayed him, clenched white-knuckled on the defense table. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Luca was released on bail with strict conditions: electronic monitoring, surrender of passport, no contact with known associates. His empire was already crumbling, assets frozen, partnerships dissolved, the casino operations sold to a competitor. I found him in the parking garage after the verdict, leaning against his car. Not the Mercedes anymore, that had been seized, but a modest sedan, with his tie loosened and his carefully maintained composure finally shattered. "Elena." He straightened when he saw me. "You shouldn't be here." "Probably not." I stopped a few feet away, maintaining careful distance. "How are you holding up?" He laughed, a bitter sound. "I just got convicted on 5 federal counts. My business is gone. I'm facing minimum 10 years in prison. I've lost everything that I spent my entire adult life building." He met my eyes, but somehow the worst part is knowing I had you and threw it away for an empire that's now dust. "You didn't throw me away," I said softly. "You just forgot I was there, which is worse." He pushed off from the car. "Elena, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I need to tell you something before sentencing, before I go away and you move on with your life. Luca, I love you." The words came out raw, unpolished. I loved you when we met. I loved you when we married. I loved you every day we were together, even when I was too stupid and proud to show it. And I love you now, after losing you, after destroying everything we could have been. His voice cracked slightly. "You're the only thing that was ever real in my life, the only thing that mattered, and I was too blind to see it until you were gone." Rain had started falling, light drops that would soon become a downpour. I stood there, coat collar turned up against the cold, looking at this man who had controlled everything in his orbit until the moment he realized control meant nothing without love. "I believe you," I said finally, "that you love me, that you regret how you treated me." I took a breath. But love without action is just words, Luca. And I spent 8 years living off your words while starving for your presence. I know. He stepped closer, rain beginning to darken his suit, which is why I'm not asking you to take me back. I'm not asking you to wait for me while I serve whatever sentence they hand down. I'm just asking you to know that you were loved, that my failure to show it was my flaw, not your worth. The rain intensified, soaking through our clothes, plastering hair to our faces. We stood there in the empty parking garage, two people who'd loved each other badly, saying goodbye to what might have been. "What will you do?" I asked. "After sentencing?" "Serve my time, pay my debt to society." A slight smile. "Maybe learn to be a better man, the kind who deserves someone like you, even if that someone can never be you again." I surprised myself by reaching out and taking his hand. His fingers closed around mine, warm despite the cold rain, familiar despite the months of separation. "You hurt me," I said quietly. "In ways I'm still processing, but I don't want you to spend the next 10 years punishing yourself. Luca, I want you to actually change, to become the man you could have been. For you, for yourself." I squeezed his hand once, then let go. The man who reads poetry on Sunday mornings, who dances in the rain, who actually sees the people he loves instead of just providing for them. That man deserves a chance at happiness. Even if it's not with you? The question hurt more than I expected. Even then. He nodded slowly, accepting this final boundary. "Thank you for testifying, for telling the truth, even though it would have been easier to let them destroy me." "I didn't do it for you," I admitted. "I did it because lying would have made me someone I don't want to be." "Still," his eyes held mine. "Thank you." We stood there as the rain fell harder, neither of us quite ready to walk away and make this goodbye final. Around us, the city carried on. Cars passing, horns honking, life continuing indifferent to our small tragedy. "I should go," I said finally. "Elena?" he called as I turned away. "If I get through this, if I survive the next few years and come out the other side as someone better, is there any chance, any possibility that you might consider—" "Don't." I cut him off gently. "Don't pin your rehabilitation on me. Don't make me the goal you're working toward. Change because you want to be better, not because you want to win me back. And if I do, if I genuinely become the man I should have been," I looked at him, this powerful man brought low by his own choices, asking permission to hope. "Then maybe," I said softly, "maybe we'll see what happens when two people who loved each other badly get a chance to love better." It wasn't a promise. It wasn't even really an opening, but it was honest. I drove away through the rain, watching Luca grow smaller in my rearview mirror until he disappeared entirely. And for the first time since filing for divorce, I cried. Not for what we'd lost, but for what we'd never quite managed to build. Luca was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Lighter than expected, his attorney told reporters, thanks to his cooperation with authorities and his voluntary dissolution of questionable business partnerships. I didn't attend the sentencing hearing. I'd said my goodbye in that parking garage, and I meant it. For the first 6 months of his incarceration, I heard nothing from him. No letters, no phone calls, no messages passed through third parties. It was exactly what I'd asked for. Space to rebuild my life without him in it, even peripherally. I moved into a new apartment, bigger, with better light for my translation work. I took on more clients, expanded into literary translation instead of just technical documents. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage, joined a book club, started taking Italian cooking classes on Thursday evenings. I built a life that was genuinely mine, not an appendage to someone else's empire. Marco sent me a card on my birthday with a sweet note about wishing me happiness. He was seeing someone seriously now, a fellow architect who shared his love of structural engineering and early bedtimes. We'd gotten coffee once, friendly and warm, both of us acknowledging that our brief relationship had served its purpose, getting me out of Luca's shadow and reminding Marco he could feel something after his own divorce. "You still think about him," Marco had observed over lattes. Not accusing, just stating a fact. "Less than I did," I'd replied honestly. But yes. Good. I'd looked at him in surprise. Someone who occupied 8 years of your life deserves to be thought about, he'd explained. Not dwelled on, not obsessed over. Just acknowledged. Given space in your history without being allowed to dictate your future. It was good advice. I tried to follow it. 7 months into Luca's sentence, I received an unexpected visitor. Dimitri appeared at my door on a Saturday morning, looking uncomfortable in civilian clothes, jeans and a sweater, rather than his usual driver's uniform. Mrs. Moore, Ms. Russo, he corrected himself. I apologize for the intrusion. May I have a moment of your time? And I invited him in, curious. He'd been loyal to Luca for 15 years. Whatever brought him here was unlikely to be casual. I've been visiting him, Dimitri said once we were seated in my living room. Mr. Moretti, every week. I poured him coffee, waiting. He asked me not to tell you, not to contact you in any way. Dimitri accepted the cup with a nod of thanks. But I think you should know what he's been doing. My heart rate picked up despite my intention to remain detached. What has he been doing? Changing. Dimitri met my eyes. Genuinely changing, Ms. Russo. He's teaching literacy classes to other inmates, taking psychology courses through a prison education program, meeting with a therapist twice a week. He paused. And he's been writing. Writing what? Letters. Not to send, to you or anyone else, just writing, processing, trying to understand how he became someone who could lose what mattered most while gaining things that didn't matter at all. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Why are you telling me this? Because he's coming up for early release soon. Good behavior, completion of education programs, cooperation with authorities. Dimitri leaned forward. And he asked me to do something before he gets out. Something I thought you should know about. He pulled out his phone and showed me a legal document. I read it twice, not quite believing what I was seeing. Luca had transferred ownership of our former home, the one he'd bought out my share of, the one he'd refused to sell, into my name. Completely. No strings, no conditions, no expectation of anything in return. He wanted you to have it, Dimitri explained. Said you should decide what happens to it. Sell it, keep it, burn it to the ground. Your choice. But it's yours now. I don't understand. He's letting go. Dimitri's voice was gentle. Of control, of possessions, of the idea that he can manipulate circumstances to get what he wants. He's learning to release things, even things he loves, if holding on to them causes damage. After Dimitri left, I sat with this information for a long time. The grand gesture was so typically Luca, dramatic, expensive, designed to demonstrate change through action rather than words. But it was also different. He wasn't using it as leverage, wasn't asking for anything in return. Just giving me something that was rightfully mine anyway, and trusting me to do with it whatever I chose. I drove to the house the next day, standing in front of the Mediterranean-style mansion that had once been our home. The gardens were maintained, Dimitri's doing, I assumed. But the house itself stood empty, waiting. I used the key that had arrived with the legal documents and walked through rooms full of memories. The living room where we'd hosted countless charity events, me in designer gowns playing the perfect hostess while Luca worked the room. The dining room where I'd eaten too many dinners alone, staring at his empty chair. The master bedroom where we'd shared space without truly connecting. But also, the library where he'd read me poetry on those rare Sunday mornings. The kitchen where he'd made me soup when I was sick. The balcony where he'd proposed, nervous and genuine, before life and ambition had calcified him into someone who forgot how to be present. I sat on that same balcony now, watching the sun set over the city, and made a decision. Luca was released on a Tuesday in October, 11 months into his sentence. I knew because Dimitri had called to tell me, careful to frame it as information, rather than a request for action. "He's staying at a halfway house in Queens," Dmitri had said. "Working at a restaurant. Kitchen prep. Nothing glamorous. Meeting with his parole officer twice a week. Keeping his head down. Thank you for letting me know. Ms. Russo?" Dmitri had hesitated. "He's different. Genuinely different. I've known him 15 years, and I've never seen him like this." "Like what?" "Humble. I let 3 weeks pass. 3 weeks of knowing Luca was out in the world, rebuilding his life from nothing, deliberately not contacting me despite surely knowing where I lived, where I worked, how to find me if he wanted. He was keeping his promise. Changing for himself, not as a strategy to win me back. On a Thursday evening, after my Italian cooking class, I went to the restaurant where Dmitri had mentioned Luca was working. A small family place in Queens, red-checked tablecloths and the smell of garlic and tomatoes filling the air. I asked for a table and ordered osso buco, my favorite dish that Luca used to make on special occasions. The server promised it would be out shortly. 20 minutes later, the kitchen door swung open. Luca emerged carrying my plate, wearing a simple white chef's coat, his hair slightly disheveled from kitchen heat. He'd lost weight during his incarceration, the sharp angles of his face more pronounced, but his eyes were clearer than I'd ever seen them. He stopped when he saw me, the plate trembling slightly in his hands. "Elena." "Hello, Luca." I gestured to the osso buco. "Is this your work?" He nodded, setting the plate down carefully. "I'm just prep and line cook, but yes, I helped with this. It smells wonderful." We looked at each other across the small table, a 1.5 years of separation and change and growth between us. "I wasn't expecting to see you," he said finally. "Dmitri said he'd told you I was out, but I didn't think." "I own our old house now," I interrupted. "You transferred the deed." "Yes." No elaboration, no expectation of gratitude. "I've decided what to do with it." Something flickered in his eyes. Curiosity. Perhaps apprehension. "Oh?" "I'm turning it into a halfway house for women leaving difficult situations." I took a sip of wine. "Providing temporary shelter, job training, legal assistance, helping them rebuild." His expression softened. "That's perfect. That's Elena. That's beautiful. The paperwork is almost complete. We open in 2 months." I cut into the osso buco, taking a careful bite. The meat fell off the bone, tender and perfectly seasoned. "This is excellent, by the way. Thank you." He stood there awkwardly, hands in his pockets, this man who used to command rooms now uncertain where to put himself. I should get back to the kitchen. "Luca?" I set down my fork. "I have Italian cooking class on Thursday evenings, but I'm free on Fridays. If you wanted to, get coffee sometime, just to talk." The hope that bloomed in his expression was painful in its vulnerability. "I'd like that, very much." "Not to get back together," I clarified quickly. "Not to pick up where we left off, just to see who we are now, as people who used to be married and maybe could be friends." "Friends," he tested the word. "I think I'd like to be your friend, Elena Russo." We had coffee the following Friday at a small cafe near my apartment. Luca arrived early, ordered my drink without asking. He remembered, vanilla latte, extra foam, and waited nervously at a corner table. We talked for 2 hours, about his time in prison, the things he'd learned, the therapy that had helped him understand how he'd used work to avoid emotional intimacy. About my translation business, the women's shelter, the life I'd built in his absence. About books we'd read and movies we'd seen and the small mundane details that build a real relationship rather than a romantic ideal. It wasn't electric. It wasn't passionate. It was awkward and honest and sometimes painful. It was real. We started meeting weekly. Coffee became walks in the park. Walks became occasional dinners at casual restaurants. Dinners became museum visits and bookstore browsing, and the slow, careful rebuilding of connection between two people who'd loved each other badly, learning to maybe love better. 4 months into this careful friendship, Luca completed his parole and was released from supervision. He called me that evening, voice shaking slightly. "I'm free, Elena. Truly free for the first time in my adult life. No obligations to my father's empire, no pressure to build something bigger and more powerful. Just free to be whoever I choose to be." "Who do you choose to be?" I asked. "Someone worthy of you," he replied. "Even if you never choose me again. Someone who shows up, who's present, who knows that love is about giving time and attention, not just providing security and comfort." 6 months later, on a warm spring evening, Luca asked me to dinner at an upscale restaurant. Not Italian, but French, somewhere new that held no memories of who we used to be. After dessert, he reached across the table and took my hand. "Elena Russo," he said, his voice steady despite the nerves evident in his eyes. "2 years ago, I watched you sign divorce papers and thought my life was ending. I was right. The life I'd been living did end, but something better started growing in its place." He pulled out a small velvet box, and my breath caught. "This isn't the ring I gave you the first time," he continued. "This is new. Like we're new. Like the relationship I'm hoping we can build is new." He opened the box to reveal a simple platinum band with a single diamond. "I'm not asking you to forget what I did. I'm asking if you'll give me a chance to show you who I've become." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "Luca, I know I don't deserve a second chance," he said quickly. "I know the old Luca Moretti destroyed what we had through neglect and absence, and treating you like a beautiful object rather than a person. But this Luca, the one who learned humility in a federal prison, who cooks in a restaurant kitchen, who shows up every Friday no matter what, he loves you desperately and would spend every day of his life proving it." I looked at this man I'd divorced, this humbled version of someone who'd once controlled an empire. The gray at his temples, the quieter confidence, the way he waited for my answer without trying to control the outcome. "Ask me properly," I said. He slid from his chair to kneel beside the table, tourists and other diners starting to notice, his hand still holding mine. "Elena Russo, will you marry me? Again, for the first time, really. Will you let me be the husband you deserved all along?" I thought about the lonely nights in our mansion, the canceled dinners, the 8 years of being invisible to someone who claimed to love me. I thought about the parking garage kiss, the federal trial, the slow, painful death of a marriage. But I also thought about the past year of Friday coffee dates, of Luca showing up exactly when he said he would, of conversations where he actually listened instead of checking his phone, of the man who'd transferred a mansion into my name with no strings attached, because letting go was more important than controlling outcomes. "Yes," I said, pulling him up to stand beside me. "Yes, I'll marry you. But Luca, if you ever make me feel invisible again, if you ever prioritize business over being present, if you ever forget that I need your time more than your money, I'll sign the divorce papers myself," he finished. No hesitation, no contest, no trying to hold on to something I've destroyed through my own neglect. His hands framed my face gently. "You have my word, Elena. You'll never be invisible to me again." We kissed there in the restaurant, applause breaking out around us from strangers who knew nothing of our history, but recognized love when they saw it. We were married 3 months later, in a small ceremony on the same balcony where he'd proposed the first time, 10 years earlier. No grand reception, no hundreds of guests, no displays of wealth that no longer existed. Just us, Dmitri as Luca's best man, Claudia as my maid of honor, and 20 close friends who'd supported us through divorce and reconstruction. As we exchanged vows, new ones written by us, promising presence and attention, and the daily choice to see each other, I thought about the parking garage kiss that had started all this. The moment Luca's jealousy had finally sparked to life, too late to save our first marriage, but just in time to light the path toward something better. "I see you," Luca said during his vows, his voice thick with emotion. "Every day, every moment, you are the brightest thing in my life, and I will spend forever making sure you know it." "I choose you," I replied. "Not the empire, not the power, not the man you thought you had to be. I choose the one who shows up, who's present, who knows that love is measured in moments of attention, not grand gestures." We sealed our second marriage with a kiss that was nothing like the parking garage. No revenge, no jealousy, no desperation. Just two people who'd loved each other badly learning to do it better. As we celebrated afterward with our small group of friends, Luca pulled me aside on the balcony where we'd just exchanged vows. "Thank you," he said simply, "for giving me another chance, for believing people can change." "Thank you," I replied, "for actually changing instead of just promising to." We stood there as the sun set over the city, hand in hand, building something new from the ashes of what we'd lost. The mansion behind us, soon to open as a women's shelter, stood as a monument to transformation. To the truth that endings can birth new beginnings if we're brave enough to let go of who we were and become who we're meant to be. Luca had destroyed his empire to win back my heart. But more importantly, he'd destroyed his old self, the one who equated love with providing, who confused presence with proximity, who could see everything except what was right in front of him. And from those ruins, we built something honest, something real, something that acknowledged our scars while refusing to be defined by them. A second chance at first love, a new beginning from old endings, a marriage built not on the fantasy of perfect romance, but on the foundation of showing up, paying attention, and choosing each other daily. As we rejoined our celebration, I caught Luca's eye across the room. He was talking with Dmitri, laughing at something, but his attention tracked to me immediately. He smiled, not the controlled, calculated expression of before, but something open and genuine, and mouthed, "I see you." I smiled back, my heart full. "I see you too." And this time, finally, we both meant it.